symbol of his promise. Did anybody need or want to add anything or have anything to say about that before we move on? No? All right, well then let's move on to chapter 9 in Genesis. Let's see, at the beginning of chapter 9, God blesses Noah and his children. He tells them to go forth and multiply. Noah begins farming. So he begins the farming and doing everything that they need to do. So he does decide to plant a vineyard. And one night he accidentally gets drunk. So it says, Noah began to be a farmer and he planted a vineyard. Then he drank of the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both of their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what the younger son had done to him. Every time I read this story, it just, it kind of points home to me. What it always means is it's kind of like that issue of gossip. When we're going to talk about somebody, we figure something out. Instead of fixing the situation or helping with the situation or offering counsel, offering, advice on a way through, or just being a listening ear, it's like when you hear something and you're like, oh, that's so tragic. And you run out and you got to tell somebody about it. And I know I am guilty of gossip. I think we're all guilty of gossip at some point in time, and it's definitely something that everybody needs to work on. Because even me, I love like drama TV, and what's more better than watching the terror of everybody's life just fall apart. And, it's just horrible. It's just one of those terrible things about us that we all need to work on. When something happens, to embarrass anybody, we're supposed to give, that guidance, that help, and just not run and tell. We're supposed to help them fix it. So that always, to me, it reminds me of that every single time, how much work I can do on myself to improve. Because, there's always a lot of problems and things like that. And it's just important to keep things confidential, because you do want to protect people and their feelings, especially our church family, because, people need prayer. And a lot of us have problems that we don't want shared with everybody else. And if somebody comes to us in confidence, or if we see something in confidence that doesn't need to be on and on and on, just like be there and be in the moment, be helpful to that person or those people. And it doesn't require going and telling others and things like that. Does anybody have anything to add to that? Like, does anybody get anything else out of that? Because that's always what that means to me every time I hear it.
That was good, Becky. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that was very good.
That's always kind of how I think of it anyways. It's because, he ran and told instead of like fixing it.
Yes.
Where the brother
exactly.
fixed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He didn't have any respect. He didn't respect his father, and the other 2 did. Yeah.
And it's always something to me too. It says, in the Bible verse, it tells us, but it says, Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his brother and told his 2 brothers outside. So he didn't even do anything to like fix it. It's almost like he turned around and was like, oh my gosh, Dad's drunk. You know what I mean? Dad's naked, something like. But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both of their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. They didn't look, they didn't observe, they didn't judge. That's kind of like what that always means to me, just in the back of my mind, is they weren't like, oh, we're better, I'm better, whatever. They came in and they even turned around. They turned their back to the problem. Like, to not observe it, to not see it, to not focus on the problem, but just to fix the problem. You know, they came in with the garment and then they just laid it. They covered the issue, you know what I mean? So that everybody in the world, because I'm sure they've got a big family going on right now, you know, they've been set there to, you know, be fruitful and multiply. So I'm sure there was a lot of people to talk to and tell about the situation, but they didn't. They covered it. They quietly handled it. You know what I mean? And they helped him.
Yes.
I always think that that's the big, and like, that's our Father, you know, that's their Father. And so to me, it's like, what does God do for us? Does he judge us? You know, does he treat us unfairly for past actions that we've done? No, he gave us Jesus. He gave us his only son so that we can be with him in heaven. You know, he made that sacrifice. He gave us Jesus so that he doesn't have to like blatantly see that sin right there in front of him and observe it and judge it. You know what I mean? He gave us Jesus so that that's washed clean. It's covered. It's covered by the blood, just like his nakedness was covered.
Yes.
I have to turn off my phone. Hold on. I got trolls playing. Sorry, I got trolls playing in the background there. Rachel, will you do me a favor and will you please send Dad the Zoom code? He's got a text on there asking for the Zoom invite. All right. And then so the problem is covered up. You know, Noah wakes up the next day and he knows what happened and he's mad. Okay. He's mad and he curses Ham and tells him that he and his people will be servers of their brethren. Like, so his people are going to be knocked down on the rung a little bit there because they're always going to serve others, because Ham could not take a moment to come outside of himself and help serve, help to, you know, administer assistance when it was needed. So now they're cursed to always be that helper, that server. It says, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, he shall be to his brethren. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. So the city of Canaan, like Ham was the founder of that, the city of Canaan will always serve God. Like that's, you know, he's like, bless you, Lord. Thank you for fixing the problem. You know, they're going to serve you. May God enlarge Japheth and may he dwell in the tents of Shem and may Canaan be his servants. So the other brothers, you know, he's like, blessed be them, so that they're fruitful, they multiply, they're just going to enlarge and enlarge and enlarge. And then Noah lived after the flood for 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years and he died.
So I think it's important to note here that we must be very careful with the words we speak over our children, because in a moment of anger, he cursed not only his son, but his son's descendants to constantly serve the others.
That's a really good
point.
That is
while he blessed the other two sons. So we must always watch what we say to our children, because we can easily curse them into a life that they would not have had otherwise.
That's really good, Christy, because I never even, I didn't even think of that for an instant. And I mean, it's kind of like too, I mean, even if we curse our children, we can curse other people with that. You know, when we lash out at other people, and we all know I'm famous for, you know, flipping my lid. Like,
guilty.
I know, you know what I mean? All of a sudden. And I mean, all of us are. It's something that we all need to work on.
Yeah.
But, you know, to work on our patience and like not just lash out with a curse against somebody, you know? That's really good, because that didn't even cross my mind. Hi, Dad. I see you joined us. Hello, everybody. My dad's on here. Say hi, Becky's dad.
Hi, Becky's dad.
Hi, Becky's dad.
Does anybody have anything to add there about that, you know, tale about Noah or anything and his sons? Logan, do you? You always got something to say? Nope. All right, moving on then. Okay, so here's my thing. This is a question I have, and I mean, I think I know the answer, but I have no idea if this is correct or not. So they tell us in the very last chapter, or the very last verse of chapter 9, it says, so all the days of Noah were 950 years and he died, right? Blatantly tells us that. So at the beginning of chapter 6, verse 3, God limits the years of people to 120. So is that supposed to be like the people before the flood and then after the flood when we're, reestablishing the earth? The time reference on ages changes because now everybody lives to be like a gazillion years old for a while. Anybody got anything on that? Because I would like to know.
Wow.
Anybody?
Maybe Noah was exempt.
No, well, there's a lot of people after him though that live that long.
Oh.
Not to 900, but like to 500,
Yeah.
600. I mean, a lot of them do live that long. So it always makes me wonder why. Like, I'm like, how can he live that, after, it blatantly tells us. So
There
I don't
is
know.
a steady decline though in the years. If you read, like each one gets a little bit shorter. So maybe it just took time for that to come into being.
Maybe. If anybody
There's-
ever finds,
There's a theory about that.
I would like to hear that theory. That's my dad, everybody.
The theory is based on the fact that if you do a mathematical progression on the ages that are decreasing, it's a perfect logarithmic decrease, which was logarithms weren't even invented back in those days. And so the idea from a scientific point of view, from some friends I have that have researched this back when we were in Bible study together years and years ago, a guy that was an engineer, the theory was that the collapse of the water vapor canopy around the earth that brought about all this rain and stuff increases the amount of radiation that comes to the earth, and the amount of radiation that is increased is a perfect logarithmic progression that would show radiation damage to cells, and so that humans, we don't live that long. And that's probably why dinosaurs died out too, was the lack of pressure from that. They couldn't survive because they couldn't get enough oxygen from the lack of the decrease in atmospheric pressure. So my way of thinking, it's due to radiation from the collapse of the water vapor canopy around the earth.
Interesting. What do you guys think of
Yeah.
that? That's pretty, that's like a scientific point of view on it. That's a pretty good, explanation, because you could, something has to happen to the earth and the atmosphere and things like that after that huge flood. And Christy, was it you that was talking about like water vapor or the coming from the ground and things like that? The places on the ground, we were talking about that, making the waters of the deep and
the fountains of the deep being broken up. My theory is that the meteors hitting the earth is what actually caused those things to be broken up enough to let that water out.
Oh, okay.
And it had to go somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point though, Dad. That's definitely, look at something scientific on it, because it has to be happening, and it's basically like how Christy was saying too, it's declining. It's like over time, God's like, okay, here's the limit, and it's going to take time for all that to go into effect. So, it's pretty
Right.
much same thing.
And God did it. It's not like it's something that just happened. It's God did it, and that's a natural consequence of what He did.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty neat.
That's a pretty good explanation. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Okay, cool. All right. So, then we've got, after we've got Noah's life, we move on to the genealogy of Noah with Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Am I saying that right? Because I don't even know. So if I'm not, I'm sorry. We'll deal with it.
Say it confidently and we'll believe you.
And then everybody will be like, oh, I was saying it wrong. Yeah, that's right. So it lists the sons that they all had after the flood. So while they're, God has said, go out, be fruitful, multiply. So they're repopulating the earth. So we go through the whole list because it's a bunch. And then we come to, of course, man has decided that we're so smart because, we think we're always brilliant. All of the people of the world are sharing that language, one language. We're all able to communicate with each other and be one unit. Of course, the people, again, start to believe how wonderful we are, and we are going to be as great as God because we are arrogant. And I mean, we all have our issues. We all, like to think we're that awesome sometimes. And so they begin thinking they're as great as God and have to build a giant tower to be as high as God is, to be up there in the heavens, up there with God, reaching that place because they want to be equal. And I just think that's crazy because that does apply to all of us because we all get arrogant, we all sin. We all, go against what God wants us to do every single day because none of us are perfect, but once again, God has to step in and put a stop to it. And that just kills me too, because it makes me think, poor God, because, he's flooded the earth. He started over and here we go again. It's not even, Ham, he was, already messing up by, not being respectful of his father and running out and gossiping rather than fixing the situation. And then here, man, as a whole has decided, yeah, we're that good too. We need to like one up it. Let's get up there too, because we want to be there. I lost my place, you guys. I should have put my hand on the Bible and then I wouldn't have lost it. Here it goes. And it came to pass as the people journeyed from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do now. Nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come on, let us go down in there and confuse their language that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore, the name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth. So do you guys think this was like an instant type thing? Because can you imagine, like I always say that with the kids, can you imagine sitting there and all of a sudden everybody starts talking differently? And you've got your carpenters over here that talk one language and, your concrete workers over here. You've got your, bricklayer makers over here, and everybody's completely like lost on just communication in general and has to find their group of people. I mean, how do you guys think it happened? Do you think that it was like, or maybe over some time, or what do you guys think?
I think it would have to be instant.
Because if not, maybe communicate the changes.
I don't really know. Like, I've never been asked this before, so I've never thought of it. But I think it would have to be instant, because if you jump all the way to Acts, once the people came in one mind and one accord, it was instant.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. And I mean, when the day of Pentecost, everybody goes in one mind and one accord, then, the language of God starts flowing and things like that. So, I mean, that's a good point. It very well could have. Yeah, that's a good point.
I think I agree with Dina that it'd have to be instant. And I like that comparison to like the day of Pentecost when everyone's come together. And then they all start speaking different languages. I think there's a comparison there. I'd have to think about it more. they're in the upper room.
Yeah.
They're in the upper room, and in Babel, they're trying to get up to God. And then when they're in the upper room, the Holy Spirit comes onto them.
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I've not ever compared the two like that before, but I mean, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. I think it does. Not to jump back, but I'm going to jump back. So when we're going through the history of Noah's family, did you guys see, I don't know if y'all read this, but did you guys see one of things about one of the hunters that it mentioned? And all that it says is that he was a mighty man and hunter, and he started the kingdom of Babel and a few others. And it's Nimrod. Did y'all see that? And I'm like, hey, his name's Nimrod. I know y'all.
Yes.
Don't act like you didn't.
Yes, I remember this.
Don't act like you didn't do that. But I think it's strange that they mention him in the Bible. He must have been pretty great to be mentioned, but all he is mentioned, and then it doesn't give us anything else about him. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because he must have been pretty impressive. I mean, he started the kingdom of Babel and some other ones, but I mean, he must have been a pretty impressive guy to be mentioned in the Bible. So didn't mean to jump off of the Tower of Babel and the comparison of the day of Pentecost, but I didn't want to get too far and forget. Nothing?
Yeah, I agree. There's a reason his name was mentioned, so he had to be pretty great back then. So yes, I agree with you.
Nimrod's a great hero in Babylonian literature. So the Bible's not the only place he's mentioned. He's a big hero in Sumerian and Babylonian literature and stuff, an ancient hero.
Well, that's kind of neat, because if it's in other literature, what it just does is it just ties the Bible to other, literature from other cultures, and that backs it up even more that it's factual. When it pulls,
absolutely,
people in from thousands of years ago, how can these, texts compare? They can, because everything's lining up. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's neat. I didn't know that he was mentioned in other stuff. And if y'all haven't noticed, my dad does a lot of the Bible studying and a lot of the researches. He's like a Blaine Bowman. He loves the history and stuff like that. So he's always got some really awesome information. Really good stuff. So I'm super glad he's joined with us. When he joined the first time, he was like, I didn't want to jump in. I'm like, no, you have to. Because see, he's got some really good points to give us and some different things to discuss and think about. So I love it.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring, Dad. See?
Thank you.
All right. So we have 3 minutes left on today's meeting. So, I definitely think we should probably just wrap it up now so that we don't carry on into something else and, end with the Tower of Babel. So does anybody have anything to add or talk about or anything like that? Because we'll move into Abram and like the promises from God and things like that in the next meeting that we have next week. So does anybody have anything to add?
Peleg. In the genealogy, Peleg. And unto Eber was born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided.
Mm-hmm.
And his other brother's name was Joktan. Who cares what his name was? It's
Right.
weird. Is this the point where the continents started to break apart? This is what my theory is. And what's your dad think?
Her dad thinks you're along the same lines as you are. I think that's probably exactly what they're talking about. This is probably where continental divide started. That's the only thing I can think of. After the flood, there's just a huge amount of erosion and moving of water and lands and stuff. And so, with all this water, I think that's exactly when the continents started splitting up. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think of the erosion and stuff. Like that didn't even cross my mind. I was thinking of like water finding its place, you know what I mean? But I didn't even think of the erosion, because it would be crazy. Like, it would entirely shift, everything.
You
I
know, the
thought it-
theories that Grand Canyon is in places like that, taking millions of years, to wear down
Yeah.
and with water. Scientific experiments will show that that huge amounts of water running off from a flood will do that just in a matter of just a few years, just
Yeah.
a very short.
like wait list before you guys.
I thought
Definitely.
that he too was that it could also be when
Make sure you go to the.
Babel happened in his day, but I can't remember well enough to know where he was born at. But how Babel was happening, the earth was divided.
You can go to the.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't think about like an actual physical divide, which completely makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
the word, I mean, it says the earth was divided. So it definitely could have been when it was shifting. I always thought that it was just like when Babel occurred and like all the different languages. So the earth was
That's
divided
interesting.
is what I was thinking. But I mean, it
That's
literally says, everybody always says, take the Bible literally. I mean, it says what it says, and it says the earth was divided.
Yeah.
So that could definitely be it. That makes me think of the movie The Croods, you guys. That's what that makes me think of. Well, our meeting is going to drop off in like 2 minutes. So does anybody have anything to add or anything like that for today? Anything else? Well, this has been a good meeting, you guys. I think that, we found some good points. Like, I think so anyways, because that's why I love doing this. I just love to come together and talk about everybody's different ideas of stuff. And I think it really opens your mind to think about some different things and even
Mhm.
pick out different stuff. I think like when I write down, what I've read and what to talk about and stuff, I find different things that I never found before. So I definitely enjoy doing this. And I just thank you guys so much for jumping on here. I do. I start to get all nervous when it's like 6:55 and I'm like, it's just me, Messina. So thank you guys for coming and joining me.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Well, you guys, I will talk to y'all next week. And thank you. And you guys all have a good night.
Bye.
too.
Oh, hey, wait.
Bye-bye.
And everybody,
Bye.
don't forget that the drama is this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So don't forget to spread the word, or Dad come up and visit or whatever, but make sure we invite you.
Cool.
Don't forget.
Okay.
Sorry, had to plug that. All right. All right.